Staying with news at Prime tonight, Gauteng Education MEC Panyaza Lisufi says all grade 1 and 8 pupils have been placed in schools. However, he's acknowledged that a number of parents aren't happy with those alternatives to submit the relevant documents to ensure that their children are placed. In 2020, the department will introduce a pilot project of school ranking, which is meant to help parents when choosing a school. The MEC says this will also help the department to know where to intervene. Responding to school break-ins, Lisufi says his department is tightening security during the holidays.
We are indeed proud that we've managed to ensure that our children are taken care of, supported, and that there's no child in this particular province that travels a long distance without scholar transport or they go to school with an empty stomach. We are also grateful, as part of our partnership with the Department of Social Development, that all our children are given what we call the basic needs. That is, the sanitary towels, we are providing face cloths, a roll-on, a body lotion. We are also providing the boy child with the so that they can be in a position to safeguard themselves. With this kind of social support that we have received from the Department of Social Development and the Department of Health, we really believe that our children have received the high level of support in terms of education in our province.
Youth unemployment is posing serious challenges to global economies. Figures from Statistics South Africa show that those between the ages of 15 to 34 were the most vulnerable in South Africa. In particular, the unemployment rate among this age group is 55.2%. That was in the first quarter of 2019. The number is absolutely staggering because these are the people that are supposed to be in work. But how do we prepare young people then who are not currently in jobs for the future of work? In studio joining me tonight, Bongani Chinkanda, who is the CEO of HDI Youth Marketing. Conversation is Ntombizamasala Hlophe, who is from Marketing Strategy Consultancy, Yellowwood. Thank you both for your time and for coming to the show tonight. We're talking about the basis. Do we even begin to have this conversation? Because many of the people that you need to be preparing for some of the changes would already in jobs, and the statistics tell us that they're not. Don't be?
I think the basis on which you have to start the conversation is one where the most responsible thing to do is to think about the future that's coming, that businesses will continue to exist, that governments will continue to need to function. So the premise on which we've done the research has been looking at if the gap today is that there's a gap between the people who are capable versus jobs, we have to explore how do we close the gap in the immediate term and how do we find new forms of employment in the future.
I suppose there's also opportunity, right? The massive crisis that this country is facing when it comes to employment. The future of work, we're told, is going to be more skills, people skills, than it is going to be perhaps hard technical issues that can be taught in a university for
think about our government was talking about in terms of telcos dropping the prices of. I think that it's towards that, especially for the poor, because you have to look at what to bridge the gap. I always look at, when you look at Sandton, for example, and the 5 square kilometer around it, that you've got a child in Bryanston who highly educated. When he thinks of the future of work, it's about robotics and how he will be skilled then. And then you go to Midrand or Rand Park Ridge, it's middle about just employability. So when I finish my degree now, will I be able to get a job, be it an engineer, be it a scientist, be it a teacher? And then you think of a child in Alex, they're facing unemployment in the face. So how do we, as a community, start bridging that divide? Because if we're not careful, you're going to have a whole generation that gets left behind. And hence, I think the conversation around dropping data prices and making sure that digital comes in bridging the skills gap.
Sure, and you know, digital can be such a of doing exactly that, but of course you have to know how to use it. Google is only as effective as you know what it can do and where you need to go to find the resources that you need.
Yeah. Interesting in the study that we conducted with HDI was a blend of the digital with the soft skills that you were referring to. So absolutely, there's a need to be able to know how to operate some form of digital device, whether it's the tablet that's in front of you or the robotics that are starting to replace some of the actual. Really interesting is this idea that while there are specific roles that will require some form of technological capacity, what's really coming to the fore is that we will need people more than ever. So yes, absolutely, a robot can produce a box of cereal quicker than a human can, but a robot will never be able to help adjust to change, help a human understand how to deal with a problem, complex problem solving, creativity, and even just the opportunity that artificial intelligence in applying what humans know to what robots could know, then really opens the opportunity in terms of, I may not have the functional skill of typing, I can have the skill of this is what people understand. And so someone else can teach the robot, but I need to be able to bring to the fore, here's the actual skill of what being a human looks like.
Sure. When we look at, in particular, industrialization and, you know, certain sectors that, of course, would benefit highly from robotics, there's also a question of South Africa and where we are as a developing country and the extent to which we are going to be able to fly, literally from not having enough manufacturing industries to then establishing industries. I mean, is that a realistic situation, or are we going to have to go through all the stages as we have seen with perhaps more developed countries?
I think you can leapfrog depending on the industry. So when you look at the drone, how drone technology has been used in Uganda in terms of transporting blood, right, from the most remote of areas to hospitals, to send the test back. Already that's an opportunity. So think about it. Obviously, it's a Ugandan operating that drone. He didn't have that skill. So we should not be as scared of what 4IR is going to bring. But also, again, because we focus on young people, our concern is everybody's having this conversation, but still there's no books in Limpopo, as an example. So how are you balancing leapfrogging into this technology world where we're going to compete with everybody else, but not leaving a whole generation behind? Because that would now be another whole to address in the future.
Because certainly education still has a key role to play, even in facilitating the process of being able to be fully efficient with whatever the fourth industrial revolution is going to bring. Nowhere near fourth generation. We're still stuck somewhere in 2G when every still needs to, at the very least, be able to have traditional keyboard functionality, just basics before perhaps we get to some of the fancy stuff.
So I think this argument for me is probably one of the most interesting things about the way that South Africa and potentially the continent as a whole has responded to previous technological advancements. We jumped from to mobile telephones, and the manner in which people on this continent have adapted technology is very clear that it's not, the absence of formal education doesn't hold people back. When you look at some of the innovative solutions that have been presented using technology, we have companies like Sweep South in South Africa who are the domestic employment issue using technology. So what's very important, which is something that increasingly we're seeing, is that Africans and the obsession with the problems we have is what we need to cultivate. Our to be connected to a plumber is what something like Kandua is actually resolving for people. That problem-solving bias is actually what's helping us go, someone else may solve the technology solution, I need to solve the definition of the problem, and between the two of them we'll be able to have a solution.
You make it sound very easy, and I wonder then for the millions of young people who would be sitting at home equally, I think, frustrated rated with some of the country's challenges and who are bright and who have ideas. It simply does take a lot more to have that idea become something like Clean Sweep, as she was saying it, which becomes, almost this national phenomenon.
I think you can, as much we cannot take away the fact that they're still digital natives. They're still exposed to digital. There's Facebook, WhatsApp, and I think what we need to start doing as business and as government is seeing how do we get them to get access to these technologies that we're talking about, and how does the track what they do. So an example would be curriculum, for example. Do you still need to be going to the shop and photocopying past papers? Can they download it off a certain portal? Hence, we need data to drop in a certain way. So I think the challenge that we've got in Africa is the tension between business union and government. And I think once we get to a place where we're all saying that's where we want to go with our country, a young child in Eastern Cape who's bright and has got a cell phone, able to create an app, right, that his peers can use. So, I mean, that's the one part. And speaking about Google, a client of ours, and we've been, earlier on this year, we were rolling out a digital skills. And what they're trying to do is offer digital skills in disadvantaged communities.
Well, it sounds like the future certainly does provide opportunities. We certainly hope that the mobile companies are going to come on board, and ICASA also will release that much-needed spectrum to expedite some of these processes. We're going to take a short break. I'm back with your headlines after this.